Everyone, welcome back to Oz and Elsewhere. My name is Rebecca and this is my channel, and today I wanted to talk about something that's been making the rounds of the bookish internet for a while, and that's Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights adaptation. A lot of people have some not really nice words about it, and I'm inclined to agree before seeing the movie, but I want to add my own hot take. I think that Emerald Fennell's planned Wuthering Heights adaptation shows why a lot of people hate reading the classics and kind of exemplifies the worst classics education mentality. And here is why. So first, if you're not aware, Emerald Fennell, the very posh British director, is planning a Wuthering Heights adaptation, and people have been mad about it ever since the casting list came out. And there are a few reasons why. The first is Robbie or Margot Robbie, I don't know, is cast as Kathy, who is kind of like in Romeo and Juliet. Kathy and Heathcliff are young teenagers when their kind of doomed romance happens, and Margot Robbie is in her 30s, so this kind of loses a lot of the pathos of an 18, 19-year-old getting caught up in this whirlpool and then, I mean, this is a spoiler, but the book is several hundred years old, and then dying. The big reason why people are mad is Jacob Elordi is cast as Heathcliff. For those of you that don't know the book, Heathcliff is described as someone who's dark-skinned, and he's described using about a racial slur on each page. Usually racial slurs directed at Romani people, but also racial slurs directed at Indian people, South Asian people, or Black people. So there's some debate over his ethnicity. He was most likely intended to be a Romani character, but the whole point is Heathcliff is not white. And actually the book is a lot about the racial abuse that he gets. He is frequently racially abused as a child, so then casting a white actor is really tone deaf, even though most Wuthering Heights adaptations have done that in the past. The real thing that kind of grinds my gears is that Emerald Fennell did cast people of color in her movie, but they're playing Edgar Linton and Nelly Dean, and I'd argue that these are the two characters that are most important to be white. Editing Rebecca here, I just realized I had a complete brain fart while recording the video and forgot the names of half the cast of Wuthering Heights, and it isn't fair to just say the names of the main cast. So Shazad Latif is the actor who is cast for Edgar Linton, and Hong Chow is the actress who was cast for Nelly Dean. I've seen Hong Chow in The Watchmen, and I thought she was fantastic. I just don't think she's the right person for this role. Edgar Linton is one of Heathcliff's biggest bullies. He frequently abuses the boy racially, and that's the reason why it hurts Heathcliff the most when Kathy marries Edgar, because Edgar kind of exemplifies this white Anglo world that has cast him out and that he can never be. And fewer people have talked about this. I didn't realize this until I looked at the cast list, and I'm so sorry I forgot the names of these actors. But Nelly Dean is a character in the book that also should be white and is now played by an Asian actress. Because Nelly Dean is the housekeeper, and she's the narrator of the book. And there's actually a really interesting article that came out sometime in the 1950s called The Villainy of Nelly Dean by James Hafley that argues that Nelly Dean is actually the main villain in Wuthering Heights. And the reason why Heathcliff is portrayed so poorly is because she's the one narrating it. She's the one saying that he is, so evil because of his nature. And in the article, Hafley argues that the reason why Dean is so angry is because Heathcliff is adopted and then placed above her in the hierarchy where she thought she would be the favorite. And that is something that only really makes sense if Heathcliff is Romani or of another racialized background and Nelly Dean is white. To flip those roles, that dynamic no longer makes sense. So why does this casting remind me of people's hatred of reading the classics in school? Because this casting shows me that Emerald Fennell only understood the book on the level that people who dismiss it say it. So what's the most frequent argument about why Wuthering Heights sucks? People say, well, Wuthering Heights is just a stupid love story where everyone in the book is awful and it's about these two people that are terrible and we're supposed to care about them. And the book is actually not about that. The book is about the cycles of abuse and how they are perpetrated, because Heathcliff and Cathy are children that go through awful abuse, especially Heathcliff, and their love is not so much just like borderline incestuous love story as it is a very strong trauma bond. And then in the next generation, where Heathcliff really does become abusive towards his son and the adopted children around him, is about how this cycle of abuse gets perpetuated. It's not so much about the love story, but that cycle only makes sense if the social commentary of the original book gets passed along. And with this casting, where the focus was obviously on, okay, who are the prettiest actors of today, who can lead doomed romantic story, rather than, okay, which casting makes sense in the hierarchy that has been created in the Linton and Earnshaw households. It shows that this kind of commentary has been erased in the movie. And to me, that's interesting, because clearly Emerald Fennell loves Wuthering Heights, but she only seems to have grasped it at the level that its detractors grasped it. And this kind of simplistic telling of these classics, ignoring all their layers, is why people get frustrated reading them and say, well, why should I care about this book? When the reason why they should care about this book is because everything that's below the surface. And then the second reason that I think this movie casting is similar to the way people complain about reading classics is because people hate classics because often the way they're taught ignores social conditions. The thing is, from as much as I enjoyed reading Wuthering Heights, that is a book that is fairly racist. Heathcliff is described almost exclusively using racial slurs. He is portrayed to be embodying the worst stereotypes that people think Romani people embody. And I'm going to link to a video by Romani creator Florian where he talks a little bit more about the book and also the movie and about the experience of being a Romani person reading it in school, because I think he obviously talks about it better than I do. But it reminds me a lot of, a lot of things I encountered. I didn't read Wuthering Heights in school, but we were at Huckleberry Finn. And the way that I think a lot of English teachers, especially from a slightly older generation, are not prepared to discuss I'm going to use problematic aspects of these classics, where they either completely ignore any social commentary, including negative social commentary, and say, like, just focus on the text, focus on the story, or they get defensive and say, well, this doesn't mean that it's not a good book, and they kind of don't open up space to discuss why this is maybe problematic. And to me, Fennell's approach to casting is that of a bad English teacher. It's either because, first of all, she's ignoring the racialized aspects of the book by making Heathcliff white and his bullies people of color. And to me, making the bullies in the book people of color shows that she's preemptively defensive about the casting. There has been a lot of conversation about the racist aspects of Wuthering Heights, and when the adaptation was first announced, people were saying, okay, well, why are we still adapting this racist book? And will the movie address this? It kind of seems like by throwing random people of color in roles that don't really make sense, that she's preemptively going like, here, damn, it's not all white. And I don't mean to say that all English teachers are bad. I know a lot of English teachers are working to incorporate this social commentary into their lessons, but Emerald Fennell's movie is, to me, portraying an approach towards the classics that is outdated, only surface level, and kind of exemplifies why people maybe have this resentment towards these books that they had to read in school because of the way they were told to read them. Now, I don't think that means we have to completely throw away the classics. I think people should read the classics, but they should diversify the classics that they read. So maybe instead of reading just Wuthering Heights, try and find translations of Papusza, I think that's how you pronounce it, a famous Polish Romani poet, so that you're not just getting views of Romani people from fairly racist writers. And classics should be read in context with their time, understanding the attitudes that writers bring to it, and even trying to understand maybe what aspects of the society at the time they were trying to comment on. And I also think it's good to read what you want to read, but also to question what you read. And just because something is old doesn't mean that it's good, but also something that's old, just because something is old doesn't mean that you should throw it away. That being said, as long as you don't approach the classics the way Emerald Fennell approached Wuthering Heights, I think you're on track to be a much more intentional reader than the director is. Thanks for listening to my rant, and I'll see you hopefully soon with another video.